EMSs were handling that through the county.
We have a certificate of need to operate in Collier, well, the counties I just suggested.
Right.
What I'm saying is that the level of training for paramedics and EMTs and the equipment that's carried in an ambulance, that's all set by the state. The minimum standards are set by the state.
Right, so your business is transporting patients from place
Yeah,
to place?
we frequently take people from Lee County to Tampa or to Gainesville or whatever.
Does that mean you compete with the EMSs
No,
in the counties?
we're not doing 911, they do 911 work.
Oh, okay.
In Lee County, they do a lot of inter-facility transfers. In Charlotte, Sarasota, and in Carter County, the local EMS agency does not do those inter-facility transfers.
I see. Thank you.
Let me build on something that David was talking about as far as unfunded mandates and such. Seems to me in your business, not specifically in your business, but there's a lot of Medicare fraud. And we've talked about, there's been others that have come before this board that says there's billions of dollars here, we just gotta go and prosecute those and stop that in order to fund this pile of initiatives over here. The fraud exists, has existed. Where are you as far as the enforcement, the prosecution, or dealing with the Medicaid fraud that's in the state of Florida?
Are we talking about Medicaid or Medicare?
Both.
Both. Listen, I pay taxes like you do. If I'm elected to office, I become a steward of the taxpayers' money. Obviously, I want to make sure that fraud and abuse, whether it's Medicare or Medicaid or any other government program, is at a minimum. And I will fight for that, and I will vote for funds for that. I personally don't see,
Is the effort good enough or funded well enough at the moment to minimize the fraud that's out there? I know you never do away with it.
Yeah, I think so. I look at the areas of fraud, at least in our industry, have historically been, if it's Medicare fraud, it's coming out of Miami, it's coming out of Houston, it's coming out of Dallas, and the feds pretty much know where the hot spots are. I get our industry journals and read the emails, and you can tell the feds are cracking down in Houston because they have some Russian, and I'm not disparaging anybody, but some Russian guy running an ambulance service, and he's transporting people that are walking back and forth to mental health clinics, and he bills Medicare $1 million. Well, that's wrong. That's that's blatantly wrong, and it just surprises me how long it takes the feds or the state sometimes to catch up to that stuff. Prior to coming down here, I worked for the Medicaid department in Massachusetts doing transportation stuff, and this was back in the 70s. We had computer programs that would spit out the anomalies, whether it was a cab company or a wheelchair company or an individual patient, as to where they were going and how much money it was costing. And I remember to this day looking at a cab company in Everett, Massachusetts, saying, "This is wrong." I mean, you can just tell. It's not rocket science to figure out what's going on sometimes, and I guess maybe it's a little bit more complicated than I thought. But if I could do it back then, just looking at computer runs, I'm surprised that they can't do it now and pick those folks out.
Related to that, one issue that you may be aware of is the whole Bonita Springs tension between the fire district and the county as to who should control ambulance services, mm-hmm. and whether it should be continue to run as a county run operation, or whether the individual fire districts, since they already do EMT, and the majority of the work of fire districts, at least in Southwest Florida, is in medical emergencies. Do you have a specific opinion on that?
No, because I'm too close to it, quite frankly. And that's really a local issue that needs to get discussed by the voters in Bonita and the county. Having said that, I was an ambulance inspector once in Massachusetts, after I left Medicaid, and it always struck me as sort of wasteful that, if you know Massachusetts, there's 367 cities and towns, and you'd have a town like Bridgewater, East Bridgewater, and West Bridgewater, total population of 30,000 people, geographically, pretty compact. And you'd have 3 different fire departments, 3 different ambulance services, and 3 different police departments, and everyone with a chief, and everyone with a dispatcher, and everyone with all the equipment that never got used, or not efficiently used. And I thought that stuff like that should probably be consolidated. From a medical perspective, I think you would argue that the more work you get as a paramedic, the more IVs you do, the more cardiac arrest, the better you get, like anything else in medicine. The more you do it, the better you get. The more heart surgeries you do, the better you become as a hospital, or the better you become as a physician, so that there's a certain minimum number of cases that you need to do on a daily basis or on a yearly basis. And I ask myself, from a cost point of view, does it make sense if they split off? And then from a medical perspective, a medical care perspective, does it make sense if the folks in the smaller communities aren't getting the number of experiences that they need to be effective and be efficient? How does that help the patient? How does that help the taxpayer?
Mm-hmm.
That's a question that they're going to have to ask. But
I imagine in Massachusetts there's a greater union influence there than down here in Florida.
no, I think it was parochialism way back when. I think the Bridgewaters probably split apart from each other back in the the 1600s, when one family got mad at another, and they just never got back together and had those influences. I really, I've been out of there for 25 years. I don't know what influences the unions have on some of those small local governments that are basically run by a board of selectmen that are elected.
We have about 4 minutes left of the interview. Any more questions?
How do you feel about the job the governor's doing?
I think he's doing okay. I was at a meeting with him with some business leaders a couple of months ago, and he impressed me with his willingness to dig in and get really involved in economic development. He told us that he would read the newspaper in the morning and see which states like Illinois were raising taxes, and he'd be calling the corporations up there saying, come on down. We don't have the regulations. We don't have the costs that you have up there, and move your headquarters down here. So, I think he's made some political missteps, but being a novice at politics, I think that was to be expected. I didn't think he was going to walk in there and set the world on fire. But certainly, if the focus is on jobs and economic development, I think he's the right person.
And have you gotten relationships with the latest House members, Dean Cannon and those kinds of people? Have you?
Oh, I knew Dean was in my class. Dean and I, we shared the misfortune of having both our houses destroyed in Charlie, and so we bonded over that. I haven't talked to Dean I saw him at the inauguration. I haven't seen him since.
So you have a pretty diverse group of voters that you have to reach, all the way from Charlotte, all the way down to the beaches and to the islands.
Mm-hmm.
What have you found and is the best method to get your message out in this compressed election cycle?
Well, typically knocking on doors is the best way to do that, and we've started that process. The problem with District 76 is there's so many gated communities and so many condos that it's difficult to knock on all the doors that you would normally do. So I have a sneaky suspicion that it's going to end up being mail, and trying to get in front of small groups of people to get your message out. And the message is, hey, listen, it's about jobs, it's about the economy, and we've got to pull together. And again, I get the second part of that is the regionalism. I think is very important.
How are you doing fundraising?
Good. I mean, never enough, but I've always, when we ran in the Senate race, I guess we raised $400,000 for that race. Not that we're not going to need that for this race, but.
Who did you run against in that race?
Nancy Dietrich. You want to hear a funny story?
There's time.
It's a sad story, actually. Yeah. Now, real briefly, I got into that race knowing that Nancy wasn't good at raising money and she didn't work very hard. Everybody in Tallahassee said, don't do it, because I was on the wrong side of Senate leadership in that race. So I got in there, raised a lot of money, knocked on a lot of doors. We were up by 12 points with 10 days to go in the race, and I was a Charlotte County guy, and the majority of the district was there. I figured I was doing okay, and then my consultant called me and said, Senator Haradopoulos just dropped $400,000 in TV advertising for Nancy Dietrich, so I lost by 2 points. So I know the power of money in politics, and I'm glad Trudy got out of that race because she was going to get killed.
Yeah. Speaking of Haradopoulos, have you made amends?
Never.
I understand.
Yeah, he was probably the worst Senate president that I ever remember.
Is he still, or is he out?
He's out.
Okay.
He's
Good riddance.
Done.
Yeah.
Yeah, done.
Finally, with
You want to know how I really feel?
He's gonna be answering questions in front of people in robes.
since we're at the end of our interview, but one final question I have is, what mistakes do you know that you'll be able to avoid now that you're no longer a novice, if elected? What can you avoid that you wish you would have known back in 2004?
Well, I know where the men's room is, but more importantly, I think leadership. If I bring anything to the delegation, if I'm elected, it will be that I know that you have to keep things very close to your vest, that don't let everybody know what you want because they'll take advantage of that. Mike Davis told me a long time ago that if there's 2 or 3 things that you wanted to do, and his was housing for the poor, you have to go along with leadership and you have to take some votes that you probably wouldn't want to take. But if your passion is to help people get affordable housing, those are some of the things that you have to do to accomplish that goal. And I hope if I can impart that to some of the new folks that are going to get elected this year, I guess that would be my lesson to them, because I learned it the easy way, not everybody does.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate Michael Grant, and thank you, editorial board members.
Thank
Questions?
you. Appreciate your time.